Okay. So, from your experience in Hollywood, what was the type of manipulation that you saw that was mainly used there?
Well, every single form, because it's a place, a place where people pretend to be so liberal, so woke, so progressive. But really, what motivates a lot of their behavior is just naked power. They want to have admiration, they want to be recognized, and they want to be respected as someone who has a position of power in the pecking order in Hollywood, right? And so they don't reveal that. It's things that I observed going on behind the scenes that revealed to me all of these manipulative games that were going on. So many of the laws of power were kind of based on things I observed, such as conceal your intentions, such as get others to do the work but always take the credit, on and on and on. Crush your enemy totally. I observed all of those in my experiences in Hollywood.
What a surprise. You mean a place that's one of the seats of power and money in the United States, arguably the cultural driving force of the United States, one of them. Uh, what a surprise that that place would be full of Machiavellians vying for power. I can't believe it. Also, Hollywood is full of people that exploit others for personal gain, right? It's almost like uh, if you ever seen like college, right, where they try to get professional athletes on their roster, right? But what is the point of getting the athlete on their roster? They don't really care about the athlete's career. They care about their own school's advancement and by extension their own salary, right? So that's kind of how Hollywood works too. You don't really care about the actor's performance. What you care about is how the actor makes you look, and that's why maybe you have to care about their performance. What you actually care about is your own personal gain. You want to be the director that made the movie that makes lots of money, so that you have the goose that laid the golden egg, right? And so there's lots of power struggles and so on as a result of that.
Because people are motivated to disguise all of their maneuvers. You don't want to be seen as somebody who's later revealed to be a Harvey Weinstein. You want to project this liberal, magnanimous image. And so it's like something you don't really ever talk about or see, but I saw from firsthand experience, and that's what I wrote about. I mean, I could tell you specific stories. I don't know if you're interested in that or not.
I'm interested. I'm definitely interested.
Well, the story that kind of sticks out mainly in my mind was I was working for a director. I'm not going to say his name. Um, and basically, he had written a screenplay. Um, and he was just sort of starting out as a director. He'd written a screenplay, and he knew that if he tried to be the director himself, people would think he was being too ambitious. He was going to write and just direct it and all of that. So what he did was instead, working with the producer, he made a point of hiring this young man who I believe at the time was in his late 20s, who was just starting out, who had written a screenplay and had directed one film. And he hired him knowing full well that it was above his head and that he was more than likely going to fail.
Ah, I understand. Hello and welcome to the Helios blog. My name is Helios, here for another reaction video. If you're new to the channel, liking the content, hit that sub, hit all for notifications. Go to my Patreon, support me. It's patreon.com/theheliosblog. Again, patreon.com/theheliosblog. Drop me a donation, like Hunter M, Adrian R, and Tom M. Shoutouts to them. Link is in the description. So what I was going to say is, I understand. This is exactly the concept of the Dowager Queen, right? Or the concept of the vizier running the kingdom, right? When the sultan is a young man, right? It's exactly what that is. You hire somebody who's inexperienced, and then when they fail, you swoop in and save the day, and then you're not the ambitious person who was flying too close to the sun. No, you're the hero because you saved the day. But you hired the guy on purpose, knowing full well that he would fail, and I'm sure they even put pressure on the guy in order to make it so that he did. Yeah, it's very clever.
And he kind of set it up so the guy would fail. He wasn't always there to help him with certain meetings and he wasn't helping him working on the script, etc. And so lo and behold, 2 days into production, the guy was messing up left, right, and center, and the producer fired him. And now the man that I was working for was able to come and say, look, I can rescue this project. Let me direct it. And he concealed his intentions completely. Nobody had suspected that he was really kind of behind all of this, that he was sort of maneuvering it in that direction. And then it made him look like he was the rescuing angel,
Indeed.
as opposed to this devious Machiavellian person who had set it all up.
That's creepy. That sounds like an exhausting way to live.
Yeah.
Keeping track of
So many
all the
people
stories that
do.
you're telling people. That sounds like a lot of work.
You mean for me personally?
Well, no, I meant for the guy who had manipulated this person into failing and then taken credit for being the savior.
Yeah, it didn't, in the end, what bothered me most of all about it, because, I can't help but say that I'm a little bit admiring people who have the guts to pull something like that off. But on the other hand, he basically ruined this guy's career.
Indeed.
Because it was
for
such
his
a
own
failure
personal
that it
gain.
really hurt his reputation. I know I followed it up immediately afterwards, and he hadn't written or directed anything since. He may have somehow revived his career, I'm not sure, but it really, really hurt his reputation. And so that was the thing that really, really bothered me in the end.
Yeah, it's again, cutthroat, dog eat dog, right? This guy wanted what he wanted, and this other guy got in his way, and I mean that's all it took, right? I understand entirely that's the machinations of the kingdom, right? Are devious. If you look in the history of any nation, right? Look at British history, look at Chinese history, look at Indian history, look at literally any civilization, Egyptian, Babylonian, any civilization that has a long history, right? And every one of them is a chaotic mess of people backstabbing and vying for power and assassinations and tricky stuff in order to gain power when maybe you shouldn't have had it, and so on. Because the throne is very seductive for some, right? Especially for pathological personalities.
Okay, well, it sounds like something that should bother you.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I feel like trying to weave those stories and manipulate situations like that, I feel like it's actually more difficult just to do things honestly.
Indeed.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean the way he went about it, hiring somebody and then having them fail and then saving it, I feel like that's actually the easy way out compared to doing what's honest, which is, hey, I wrote this screenplay and I want to direct it, and then fighting that way, which probably makes your life more pleasant in the long run.
False. But anyway, what is Mikhaila doing by this behavior? What this is called is virtue signaling, right? So Mikhaila is saying, look at what a good person I am. Don't you think I'm a good person because I'm promoting what you should be doing? You should be a nice person. You shouldn't do bad stuff. That's what's happening. It's disingenuous at best, and I'm sure Robert even detects this. Yeah. What Mikhaila is doing, ironically, is manipulative as well. And this is what girls do a lot of the time. This is what they do. Many of their actions are just virtue signaling, which is trying to show everyone around what a good person they are because they want to be perceived as a good person. It's not out of genuine concern or genuine care for others. It's out of a desire to be seen as the best they can be for the purpose of reproduction, effectively,
rather than having to manipulate everybody. Is a lot of Hollywood like that, with people just playing these games?
Well, it's my own personal experience. I saw that up front. I can't say that it's anecdotal, but I've now been working with people in Hollywood who were trying to produce some of my own books for film and television. And I consult with a lot of directors and actors and people in the business. And and then they all have stories to tell me about things that are even worse than what I've told you. So I do believe it's pretty, spread out there.
Well, here's the thing, and I believe this pretty strongly. In an industry where you have to pretend to be something else, it's bound to attract the biggest liars, right? Because when you lie, you say that you mean something, but you don't actually mean it, right? Lying and acting are not so far away from each other, right? So it doesn't surprise me at all that actors are lying and cheating each other, and so are directors and so on, because the industry literally is related to lying. So I mean, it doesn't really seem that surprising to me. Also, all industries that make a lot of money are inherently corrupt, right? Every athletic association you can think of, they're all corrupt. Every business that makes a lot of money, all corrupt. Look at Wall Street. Look at politics in general. Look at I already talked about athletics, and obviously acting, and so on. And I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised at all that these big jobs. I mean, obviously CEOs are also corrupt, but any job that has a very high salary, right? For every position that a person has gotten, I'm sure some cutthroat stuff had to happen. So, for example, here are anecdotal stories I've heard. Now, again, just like Robert says, this is my own personal experience, but this is what I heard. So, for example, for medical school or law school, there are kids that go to the library and they rip up the study books, right? They rip up the textbooks so that you can't borrow a textbook and have full information, so that you can't study for the exam as well as a person who bought the book. Every little thing to do to gain that advantage, to gain the position, you see?
And even though things are getting better in some ways, they're trying to diversify Hollywood, with more women and more ethnicities, etc. Still, that old kind of power dynamic is there, because it's an industry that it's always been like that, going back to the earliest days in the 1920s. And so I don't think that's ever really going to change. There is one industry I can tell you that's even worse than Hollywood.
It's got to be
which
banking.
is I've learned through my, exposure to rappers, etc., is the music industry.
Ah, yes, of
the
course.
Things that go on the music industry make Hollywood look like kindergarten. But
yeah, I've totally forgot to mention the music industry. Again, anything that makes money. Yeah. If you've watched some documentaries, right, on these big rappers and how ripped off they got, right? Because a lot of them come from nothing. They come from like poor areas in in America, right? And so the producers who don't, they give them as little money as possible and try to enrich themselves as much as possible. They're like parasites, right? They're like, oh, I'm offering you this big contract, but really it's like 1/100th of what they should have made or what they should have gotten, right?
Okay. And is that mostly like relationships between men and women in the music industry?
No, it's between like record producers and artists and managers, etc. Where it's a very, very exploitative environment where, people that you never really know where the money is coming from, how many albums you've sold.
Oh.
Particularly now with with so many things being streamed, there's a lot of deception going on, a lot of funny marketing.
And what's more is this. Even the music produced very often is not even written by the artists themselves, right? So like Drake, for example, doesn't write his own songs, and so on. There's many artists, they don't write their own songs even. So it's basically all fake and all exploitative, right? Like it's not really an industry you actually want to be in. Anyway.
I'm sorry, funny accounting going on to hide the revenue streams. And then people who are fresh, who come into the business early on, they sign contracts without realizing they're signing away all the ownership to their work. Ooh. It was 50 Cent who kind of revealed a lot of this to me. And he said, he grew up on the streets of Southside Queens, dealing crack, seeing people murdered, dealing with hardcore stuff day in and day out. And he said, nothing had ever prepared me for the shit I saw in the music business. it was worse because at least on the streets people were direct, and you kind of more or less knew where they were coming from. But he never knew where these people were coming from, and it was very disorienting.
That would be Machiavellianism, manipulation. Yeah, that's insane actually. That a person who suffered such a difficult life would say that the industry that they eventually became part of. I wonder how much 50 Cent got cheated out of his money. That's actually crazy. That's kind of unbelievable, but it's so crazy as to be true. That's what it sounds like to me anyway.
I wonder if that's going to change rather dramatically. Like, things are changing so much with people being able to grow social media profiles and have followers on YouTube. I know a couple of artists that haven't signed with anyone because they're like, why? I already have, 2 million followers on YouTube. The marketing aspect is kind of gone. I'm wondering if that'll change. And then these contracts that are like, what are they called? The ones that you, like you said, you sign away everything. Like, that's got to start fading away. Even just book publishers, I find, that take a large percentage because they're offering marketing services. Well, a lot of people don't need marketing services anymore if they can get on podcasts or, yeah.
It's true. It's very true. And there's a kind of a democratization going on. But the only thing that's the film business is different, I think, than those other examples, because to make a film and market it, you really, really are dependent on the Hollywood power structure. You could make your film cheap on an iPhone, for instance, which people do nowadays, and film it, but you're not going to be able to get a theatrical release. You're not going to be able to get it streaming on Netflix, etc. So you are very much dependent on the old power structures there. So that kind of democratization that's very positive that's going on with the internet, it's happening a little bit in Hollywood, but I think it's going to reach a limit.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
It's like, okay, the adage is this: those in power or those with power use that power, right? So if they have a stranglehold on the industry, they're not going to just give up their stranglehold. That seems idiotic. Why would they ever give up that stranglehold when that stranglehold is the reason why they're getting so rich in the first place? It's idiotic to break up the thing that is making them successful, so they won't do it, right? And that's why you're not going to be able to get that sort of thing, if you ask me.
For the 48 laws of power, why did you choose 48? You probably get that question constantly.
I get that question. Well, I didn't really choose 48. The process was kind of weird. I don't usually like to reveal, how the sausage is actually made, but I guess I'll go ahead and tell you. I started out researching all of the great power people and influencers throughout history and all cultures, and all the power games that were kind of the most sexiest, the most interesting. And out of that, I kind of derived these patterns of behavior that transcended time and culture. And I had 72 of these patterns originally, which were to be laws of power. And slowly I started eliminating them because this didn't seem strong enough. I started combining them, getting rid of them. And I ended up with 52, if you can believe it or not. And publishers said, 52, it doesn't sound good. And it also sounds a little pat. It sounds like you meant it to be 52 weeks of the year or 52 cards in a deck. We prefer the number 48. And so I go, well, what am I going to say? But then I thought about it, because I don't like to be too rigid and too closed and stubborn. I thought, it's true, 48 laws sounds a lot better than 52. It looks better. It's a very powerful number. So I'm going to do what they say, but I'm going to take the 4 laws that are kind of extra, and I'm going to combine them into other laws and create these kind of double laws with 2 sides to them and bring it down to 48. So I don't usually try to reveal that, but I guess you lured it out of me somehow.
It's not such a big deal. Again, to write a book like that requires years and years of effort, right? And it's already done. So But the strategy of research and then, synthesis and and then breaking it down some more, like, it seems like a wise way to write, a book of non-fiction, if you're trying to figure out stuff about the world. So.
But that's sort of why it ended up with 48.
Okay, well, clearly that paid off. Something worked.
Yeah,
So.
well, things like numbers and colors, they have a kind of a primal effect on us. And you can't ignore this sort of nonverbal, primitive side of our nature. And so, like the color red, as people know on who design like Facebook, as a button has this certain effect, whereas black has this effect. The number 48, for some reason, kind of has this sort of, it just seems definitive. Whereas if it were 47, that wouldn't have that feeling, or 49, or 50 sounds like too obvious. But man, that 48, it's like a sweet spot, What am I going to do?
It looks like they stumbled onto something there, the publishers, right? Pretty funny. But anyway, it's interesting to think about. I don't know much about numerology, which is, it's kind of like astrology, but for numbers. But let's think about why 48 might be relevant. So, yeah, I agree. 50 is too clean, so people will be like, okay, it's just obviously viral marketing. And a odd number, 47, 49, it also doesn't sound that good. 12 and stuff is too small. 20 is also too small. It's like almost like a handbook. You want it to be a bit more robust, right? Like 35, 36, it sounds like you're not trying hard enough. Like, I understand why 48 isn't the sweet spot. And 72 would sound like it's too much. It's like, oh, I'm never going to get through that. 48 seems to be a sweet spot. I agree. It's interesting to think about.
It is strange, but very true. So are any of these laws of power honest, or are they all kind of types of manipulation?
No, I'd say more than half are honest, and more than half are kind of common sense and relatively positive. So relatively, interaction with boldness is not an evil law. It means when you start something, if you show that you were bold and decisive, people are attracted to that. I talk about play a perfect courtier. The world that we live in, every kind of time there's a power structure, it's like a court surrounding a king. And you have to be charming, and you have to be polite, and you have to be gracious in this court. So there's nothing you might find that a little devious, but it's mostly about being polite and understanding other people and kind of understanding the culture that you're in. There's a law called work on the hearts and minds of others, which means that you can't force people into things. You have to get them to want what you want to do, as opposed to pushing them in certain directions. Despise the free lunch, which is all about the power of generosity. You don't want to always be looking for things on the cheap. You don't want to accept things that are free. You want to pay for things, and you want to be generous with your time and your money and your energy. I could go on and on. There's a core, maybe a third, that are kind of a little bit hardcore and a little bit, definitely manipulative.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about, right? And being generous with your time and so on. So I don't know if you guys have tried this, but providing value to people is one of the best ways to feel good, right, in your life. So, setting up a group that does stuff, doing activities as a group and so on. That sort of thing is very positive, not only for the people but for you as well. So, all right, let's read this Reddit post. Oh, it's long. Okay, let's see how it goes. Posted 9 hours ago. So my husband, so the guy's 31 and she's 28, wants me to cut ties with my best friend, who's also 28, because she's now in an open marriage. I've known my best friend Sammy since our freshman year of college, about 10 years. I'm married to Mark, and Sammy is married to Tom. Mark and I have been together for 4 years, married for 2 years, and Sammy has been with Tom for 7 years, married for 4. Sammy has been having a very difficult time for the past couple of years. She's discovered that Tom had been having numerous affairs both before and after the marriage, and was in the process of getting her ducks in a row. to leave. She'd even secured an apartment with the family's help and was about to move when Tom was in a very bad accident and severely injured. The accident was entirely his fault, a one-car accident while he was driving and had been drinking, on the way back from seeing one of his affair partners. Out of compassion, Sammy decided not to leave while he was recovering, both because he was on her health insurance and because he needed a lot of help with doctor's appointments, etc. Since then, Tom has had numerous surgeries and isn't yet able to work because he's still recovering his energy and mobility. In the meantime, Sammy's working 2 jobs to replace Tom's income and pay the portion of the medical bills not covered by insurance. Fairly early in this recovery, Tom admitted everything he'd done and said he wanted to change and repair things, and Sammy thought she owed it to him to try. However, she discovered a few months ago that though he wasn't having physical affairs, he'd been continuing to have bedroom fun conversations and emotional affairs with women online. At this point, Tom admitted that he wasn't wired for monogamy and suggested an open relationship. Sammy didn't really want this, but again felt she owed it to Tom not to divorce until he was recovered enough to work and support himself. So she reluctantly agreed. She hasn't gone on dates or anything yet, but is thinking about starting to try to meet some new people. My husband Mark doesn't believe in open marriages and thinks that marriage requires monogamy, and that anything else is cheating, even if the married couple fully agrees otherwise. He wants me to end the friendship with Sammy because she's now a cheater, in his view, and thinks she'll influence me to cheat or want an open relationship as well. I think this is entirely unfair. Sammy didn't ask for this and is only trying to make the best of a bad situation, and she hasn't dated anyone yet. The alternative would be for her to suffer while Tom continues to have affairs, or divorce Tom now and leave him without a home and insurance. Mark is now saying this is a deal breaker for our marriage and I have to choose between him and Sammy. I feel sick over this because I made vows to Mark, but I don't think Sammy is doing anything wrong under the circumstances, and she needs her friends more than anything right now. See, the wife doesn't want to do what the husband wants to do. You see what I'm saying? She's like, but, going against, this is what I want. You see what I'm saying? She should just drop the friend. But anyway. Yeah, now watch the comments say the husband is being immature because he doesn't want her to have cheater friends. 701 upvotes. Tell Mark that Sammy isn't in an open relationship, Tom is, and Sammy is trapped in a failed marriage. Okay. 314 upvotes. If you're a true friend to Sammy, you advise her to divorce Tom and move on with your life. Don't let the bad guy drag her down. Sammy owes Tom nothing and divorces him immediately to leave him in the hole he dug himself. Yeah. But again, notice what are the guys that women stay with, right? Okay, anyway, we're going to end the video there. If you're new to the channel, liking the content, hit that sub, hit all for notifications. Support me on my Patreon, patreon.com/theheliosblog. Again, it's patreon.com/theheliosblog. Drop me a donation like Hunter M, Adrian R, Tom M. Shoutouts to them. Link is in the description. Take care of yourselves, guys. Thank you for watching the whole video, and I will see you next time.